Now this is an upgrade I feel for any super sport styled motorcycle is worth its weight in gold. What really made this noticeable to me was the imperfections in the tracks as well as the street. You know, when you hover that front tire, whether you're giving too much throttle or if you just hit a nasty bump and you get that front end up as you're trying to lean the bike over and transition it into a turn, it just scares the crap out of me when you hit the ground and just start slamming back and forth. So the first thing we need to do is get this thing on a front and rear stand. I'll link both of these down in the description if you don't have a front and rear stand, but most notably is going to be that front stand. And the reason why it's different than a normal front stand is it actually picks up from the triple tree versus picking up from the forks. So it'll be very important that you get one that does that, as we will be slightly removing the left fork just to get this clamp on. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get this tire off. So we're gonna loosen up our pinch bolt here. We don't need to take it off to get it nice and loose. And then with a 14 millimeter hex socket here, we can remove our front axle. And we're not gonna take it off yet. We're just gonna kind of get it nice and loose. Next thing to go after is gonna be our calipers. So here's our right caliper. We'll just zip these guys out of here. And don't forget this bracket here for our ABS. It's gonna come off as well. And we can just nicely lift back, pull that caliper right off of there. We'll do the same thing over on this side. Don't forget another bracket for our ABS. And we can slide that guy off of there. And then for our ABS line, we have this 4 millimeter down here to take off. There it goes. Just slides right on out of there, and we can just leave it hanging. And from here, we'll just keep taking our bolt all the way out. You can always lift up on this tire here, which kind of helps quite a bit. And we can just spin and pull until we get this axle right on out of there. Things to pay attention not to lose is one of these on each side. They are identical. We just don't want to lose them, and we do want to re-grease them with a white lithium when we put it all back together. So there goes our front tire. So now that we got the tire off, we're going to be removing this one fork, so we need to be able to just slide it down. So we're going to drop these two 5 millimeter. Now we can easily take our fork out. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this one side piece fairing, which is not a lot of bolts, but it should make it a lot easier for us to get in under here. We'll start off with these 3 millimeter bolts right here. As always, don't lose these plastic washers that come on these. Working our way around the bike, we'll get this guy out. Just under the fuel tank here, we have one of these that we just push in the center, pull it out. And then in here, we have 2 more. We've got 1, 2. Pull these guys on out. And with all those removed, we can just slide forward and lift this guy up and out of place. We have this 4 mil down here. And this guy can just be lifted up straight, the little rubber piece here. Another 4 millimeter here. There is one more push button here. And also this electrical here that we can squeeze with our fingers and try and push down. That is our turn signal. We could just unplug our turn signal altogether. Can't really go wrong with a set of picks. Just to kind of lift up that button, or help you lift that button if your finger is sissy like mine apparently. Pop it out. So now coming back over on this side of the motorcycle, you can see there are 3 little Phillips pieces that we need to remove. Now I say they're Phillips, but in my opinion it is much easier to do them with a pick, because I could never really get them to roll out just enough. So there's one, there's the second one. And here's the third one. The last one to get out is going to be this little push pin that's holding the little fairing, this piece that has the little blue R7 on it, this little plastic extra piece under here. We'll pull that guy out. So what I'm going to do here is just kind of pop that apart there. Just took a little extra pressure like that, and it separates them. The next thing to do is kind of a scary one, but we're going to pry and try and push forward. Mine easily popped out, but really what you're trying to do is pop this guy out and then push forward. You can see these two plastic pieces where they went inside the fairings. So now that we got the fairing off, the next thing is gonna be this. It's only 1, 2, and 3 bolts. And the first one here is just a push pin and pull it out. And we'll go with these two 5 mils right here that are gonna hold this plastic piece into the radiator. Now, I'm not gonna unplug anything. I'm just gonna get it out of our way. Now that we're in here, the first bracket we get with this Graves steering damper, basically, is this one right here. And you can see it has this opening right here and this bolt right here, this hole for a bolt. And it's gonna be this bolt, and this metal piece is gonna go around our stock steering stop. So we're gonna start by removing this first bolt. It is in there pretty good. We'll do a quick little test fit. See how she fits on there. Definitely gonna put a little blue 242 on here. Or a lot, I guess. There we go. All right, I'm not gonna kill it because they're pretty soft bolts. I'm gonna work my way up on the clamps here. Here is the first one. These are 6mm. All we're gonna do is loosen them. We do not need to take them off. Doesn't take much, and they're already can be done by hand now. Next on the list is gonna be this bolt here, which is what's holding our clip-ons to the triple tree, or to the forks anyways. So we'll loosen this guy up. We don't have to take it off, it just needs to be loosed by hand. Then the next thing is in here, we have this little, be careful with them, but we have another bolt in here. And this is what's connecting to our clamp here for our clip-on. This is a 5mm, and this one we are gonna run all the way out. We can leave the bolt in there, but we're just gonna let this clip-on kind of fall down a little bit. Now this is the last bolt we gotta take off to remove our forks, but what I'm gonna do is measure how deep my fork is sitting, and it is at 7mm. So now we can loosen this guy here and make sure that the fork doesn't come sliding out. It probably won't, but just in case, you can tell if you just move it a little bit, the fork's gonna slide out. So our fork is free, and we only wanna lower it down enough to slide our clip-on up and off of the motorcycle. So now for this piece of the clamp, which is actually kind of annoying, because if you look online, this bolt, or this part where the bolt goes in, is actually on this side, because this protruding edge needs to go down, and that is how we'll put it on the motorcycle, which is down like that. But like I said, what's annoying is this in the pictures, of course, goes this way. So that's kind of frustrating because you do want this shooting down. Now we just gotta weasel all this this fork right back in, put our clip on, and keep going until we get it back up in. I'm gonna tighten this top one just enough to where it won't slip out on us. And now we'll just measure it up. So what I'm doing is I have one of these kind of very inexpensive micrometers, I believe is what it's called. But this little metal piece protruding out of the bottom is what I'm using to measure. And we're trying to measure the top of this fork to the top of the clamp itself. Right now I'm sitting at 9. So we gotta loosen this guy up just a tad bit. Hopefully just enough to where we can move. 5, 6, oh, it's actually right at 7 because it just slightly moved. So we'll go ahead and tighten this one down just enough to where it won't move. We will come back and torque all of this properly. This horn is definitely in the way. I was able to bend it down ever so slightly. And then most importantly, on the back of it, there's a 10mm. So we could loosen this 10mm and rotate our horn and re-put it back into play. So these are also slightly bendable. We could kind of spin it out of the way and tighten it back down. And that's enough to keep it out of the way, as well as allow our steering damper to work inside here. This plastic piece down here that kind of like protects, the bottom of the triple tree, that is gonna keep us from moving forward. So this is definitely gonna have to go. But you can see under here and see the little 2 pop pins that we must pop out here. There's one on each side, and we'll just pull those 2 out. There we go. We have 2 more 10mm bolts under there. The one helps hold this little plastic tray in here that we're trying to remove, and it also holds the bracket for the horn. Okay, there's one of them out. There's the second one's out. I think once we're set up like that, we're gonna be just fine. So I think that's gonna work out quite well. All right, so now that we have all this installed, we know it's going to work. So we're gonna go ahead and put all this back together, put the tire back on it, put it back on the ground, and then finish up with here, because this will be able to completely get off of the motorcycle to where we can easily screw in our bolt for the steering damper. So we'll get our clip-on line back up. It is 5mm for the top one here. We'll just kind of shake it around and let it kind of work its way back up on top of the tree here. So this is a 9.6 foot-pounds for this top bolt here. Go ahead and get that torqued. And we'll put this little plastic cover back on there. Now this handlebar pinch bolt down here, it is 24 foot-pounds. Jeez, way more than I would expected to be putting on that, but that's directly out of the service manual. And back to the top triple is a 19 foot-pounds. There we go. And these two lower ones are a 17mm. There we go. Make sure these get put back in there. Line it back up. Get that bolt going. Make sure we get these going by hand because they are definitely quite the pain in the ass. Get her going. Of course, we want to clean everything off because we are going to re-grease all of this. We'll go ahead and get our tire back in. I like to apply the white lithium right here on both sides. We'll stick our little spacers in the front. Re-clean off our axle. Put a little tiny bit of white lithium on it as well. And I got to be very careful when lifting up so you don't drop the spacers out. You'll have to wiggle. None of this wants to go back together perfectly. There we go. Use our socket to kind of get everything going back in. Got her close. Our front tire is a 48 foot-pound. And we'll leave this loose until the bike is completely on the ground and off all the stands, and we can slam on the front tire to kind of exercise the suspension, which will kind of let everything kind of level out, and that's when we'll hit our pinch bolt. Now we are officially done with this front stand. So put the bike back on the ground, and now we can actually get in here and move some of this stuff out of the way, like this plastic piece. Getting the steering damper, or getting this screw, just remember we have Loctite. We want blue Loctite on this hex key that's going to hold here on the bottom. There we go. We will put blue Loctite on the other one. There we go. Let's get it all lined up. Just gonna get them tight. They do have Loctite in them, so I'm not super worried. There we go. We'll tighten up the one on the bottom here. That's enough. And that last bolt with the kit is a 5mm that goes in here. So we're gonna just kind of get it started with fingers. Definitely worth taking the other side off, just out of pure hassle, guys. This is so much easier to do now that I don't have that I'm not fighting with it, basically. We now have a steering damper on the bike, which is cool. Now all we gotta do is put the bike back together. Don't forget there's these same little plastic spacers that are kind of in the front fender, which would slide in between the metal bracket. Line all this back up in here. Yeah, it was actually quite easy to just put that little 8mm back in through that metal bracket and then through the plastic and back into the bottom of the triple tree. And in fact, if you don't put this plastic back on, it makes the horn not fit at all because the horn then sits up too high. and pushes up on the steering damper. To feed our little black plastic clips in, pop them into place, pull them out first, slide them in, and then push them in. So we got those two back in, which is holding this little plastic piece in here just fine. And now we just gotta tighten these two 8mm down here. All that's back in there. So one thing we haven't done yet is kind of finish tightening. I wish I would have done this before, so hopefully you'll learn from me. There's always some dumb little mistake, isn't there? So there's two 4mm hex keys. Tighten these before you get to this point, because this isn't going to be fun. Definitely don't mess this up. This is gonna suck. That's not that bad. They're going. Yeah, see, these are already tight. That's tight enough already. You don't want to put a lot on these. It's just like your front forks. You do not want to over tighten them or you'll actually make them not work properly. Luckily, it didn't take much effort to do that, I guess. Before we completely tighten everything up and we're done with this thing, we do need to put some fairings back on to make sure it's not touching anywhere and that everything's gonna work okay. And we can still ultimately, there's plenty of adjustment left in here, so we could always loosen this bracket and move the damper back and forth as well if it's not kind of lining up right. So we do have some adjustments. Let's get these fairings put back together and then we'll test it out. Now we'll go ahead and rotate this guy back into place. We'll rotate this guy up and under there. There we go, getting that back into place and then putting that pop pin back in there. We also have these two that are gonna go in here. But what's important to remember is they do have these little metal washers and you wanna make sure that those washers go inside the plastic so it sits nice and flush. These two are 5mm. Get those tightened up. It's gonna be sliding this in, popping that in. Starting up on top here, we have a pop pin turn signal that we need to plug back in and pop back into its place. This wire here got fed inside here, like that. We have this silver 4mm right here. We're gonna pop this guy back in place with the little rubber dammet there. The black 4mm went down on the bottom and the silver went up on top there. Of course, I moved all these around on a previous video so that none of the silver bolts are showing. All right, this guy we could put back in here. Just kind of sets down and slides back. Got a black 4mm in here. 3 pop pins. I'm sure you guys remember where these all came from. There we go. Now that we're back down here at the bottom, I'm gonna line all that up and you can feel it just kind of fall right into play there. So there's 1, 2. There's the third one. Sure the screw is out, should slide in there easily and then pop in. The other one's just a little bit higher. There we go, got it in, pop it in. There's our other Phillips one. And then also this one right here, which was a pop pin. All right guys, so a problem I ran into now that we've got this top panel on is the bracket is actually rubbing the top of this panel. So we're gonna have to shift the bracket over a little bit and potentially shift the whole steering damper over inside of the damper's bracket. So I'll quickly take this guy back off again so I can show you guys what we're gonna do. We'll just loosen this guy up a little bit and we'll run it over. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I basically took the steering wheel all the way to lock. And the cool part about the damper is it's shooting pretty low here, so there's no way it's gonna hit the plastics on this side. It's really just this side that's the problem. We don't want our damper bottoming out, so all the way lock to lock, about this position right here. I'm gonna see if I can tighten it down, get the plastics back on. We'll tighten it down by hand right now, just so it can't move. And we'll see. There we go, we can go lock to lock on that. Before we forget and put all this back together, we'll go ahead and get the zip tie back on. for our horn cable. Keep it out of the way, make sure it's not getting pinched up against anything. I'd say right now we're looking good as long as our fairing could go on. We'll put that on and see if that's touching right now. Perfect. We're no longer touching the top plastic fairing. So there we go, guys. It is not even touching our brake lines anymore. I mean, it is at full lock to lock. It sets on them, but it's not rubbing them at all. So that's the way this is intended to be installed. So that about does it, guys. The only thing left is to obviously put our brake calipers back on, bounce the bike up and down, retighten our forks pinch bolt, and obviously I need to put together the other side of the bike. But I would say I'm pretty happy with it, the way it came out. Really looking forward to riding it, especially out on track, to see if I can actually get rid of some of that wiggling. To save you guys some time on the video, I'll link up a video up here if you want to watch to do your tires, do a little bit better job on your tires. Obviously the other side of the motorcycle is the same as this side, so there's going to be no major differences when putting this fairing back on the other side. So thanks again for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful for you, and I'll see you next week. Bye.